Hey there, it is another beautiful day. Let's watch some stuff.
One more thing this half hour. There is a rare phenomenon happening right now across the globe. As of about 3 minutes ago, 7:15 Eastern Time, 99% of the entire world's population is facing the sun. That means we're all experiencing some degree of sunlight at the exact same time, either full daylight or, for a lot of other folks, twilight. If you look at the map right there, just the Pacific Islands and Australia, the Australian region, are fully in the dark. 99% of the world.
And California, poor California.
Yeah.
That's actually incredibly easy to explain because the Earth is tilted slightly. So when it turns and it's facing the sun at the right time of the year, at the right time of the day, if you will, it's going to get a lot of sun on the land masses. That's not that difficult.
It's a project first dreamed up by the military to get information from the battlefield.
They call it smart dust, and the new technology may soon make it possible to keep track of anything, anywhere, including you.
Smart dust originated with DARPA back in the 90s. This powder-sized chip is something called the Mu chip from Hitachi. It's the smallest commercially available RFID system in the world. You can literally scatter this stuff like dust or embed it into a sheet of paper. It doesn't require a battery. Flecks of computing power settling on your skin, ingested, monitoring you inside and out.
The nanoparticles are designed to go under the radar of the immune system, and so they are undetected in the body.
We have computing everywhere. We have connectivity everywhere. We have infrastructure that can compute those with new capabilities like AI.
If you have enough data and you have enough computing power, you can understand people better than they understand themselves, and then you can manipulate them in ways which were previously impossible.
Transhumanism is a growing movement that aims to use technology to modify our bodies, sometimes in radical ways to make them stronger, faster, and better.
Sometimes I forget how technologically advanced our civilization has actually been, right? And it's not like, ooh, super crazy like it is now, but still there were periods of time where I'm like, oh, we were able to do that then. I forget about that. Like these were in the 90s, these RFID chips. And they just mirror back any radio frequency that you send out. So we could basically like dust an enemy's stuff, right? And then if it were to move, we would be able to see where it was moving. Which makes me think, not only was this only in the 90s, but it was also way back in the 90s. So, how more advanced has it gotten? And what are they putting that stuff in? Hey there. I love what you've done with the place. Looks nice. Hey, well, I've got your attention. Would you mind hitting that like button for me? It'll really help out my channel. And if this is your kind of content and you haven't already, you can subscribe as well. Then come back tomorrow because I'm making a new episode every day. That's good.
Unexplained mystery of the day. Morgellons disease. According to medical professionals, Morgellons disease is a poorly understood illness during which small fibers sprout out of sores on the body. People suffering from the condition often report feeling as if something is crawling on or inside them. Usually, when a patient reports symptoms, medical staff can observe some kind of traditional sore, but the mystery comes when patients report the presence of fibers coming out of the sore. Medical providers are currently torn on how to classify the disease, with some believing the condition is physical in nature and affects skin cells in some way. Some believing the disorder is completely psychological, and others believing it is a blend of both physical and psychological symptoms. Many patients reporting these symptoms claim their medical providers ignore or discredit their complaints. Doctors say they still have extensive research to perform before they will be able to explain the perplexing disorder.
I just stumbled across this disease just haphazardly yesterday. I don't even know how I got there, but I did. And now we're going to share this together. It's really intriguing because there are so many different perspectives from a medical standpoint about this particular disease, Magellan's. It's pronounced differently in every single clip, I swear it. But it's really interesting. So let's check it out.
Morgellons disease is a condition where people have these sensations of things either crawling or coming out of their skin. They may think they're insects or worms or fibers. It's extraordinarily frustrating because doctors can't find anything objective causing these sensations.
Does the medical community distinguish between Morgellons disease and delusions?
Morgellons and delusions of parasitosis, I think, to many physicians are exactly the same thing. The Morgellons is a word patients use when the doctor would call it delusions of parasitosis. One of the things that makes me feel like I really am good at what I do, and that feeling of joy you get when you help somebody who's suffering a lot, you get that when you're able to help somebody who has Morgellons disease.
So is Morgellons real?
Well, what is real? Patients are suffering with this. There's no question about that. And as a physician, I want to help them cure it.
So this doctor pronounced it as Morgellons, but he says that it's a psychological disorder. So it's not actually like anything coming out of the skin. It's just you feel like there is things crawling out of your skin. But that doesn't explain why you see the one before where they had like the little bumps and stuff, right? It's really, unless they pick at it. There's like some what if it's a nervous disorder? Huh. I don't know.
Did you know there's a real medical condition where your skin produces worm-like filaments made of the same material as your fingernails? And no, I don't mean hair. This is called Morgellons disease, and it's often experienced by people with chronic Lyme. As someone who's been treating patients with chronic illnesses for a long time, I have seen and heard of some super weird stuff, and this one is definitely up there. It's also not really well understood by most doctors, so patients get some kind of fringy ideas about it, and I have heard everything from worms infecting the skin to extraterrestrial nanobots described as being its cause.
A little more about the creepy crawlies.
But there is a lot of research around it. And we have a pretty clear idea both of what it is and how it should be addressed. The closest condition we know of to Morgellons is bovine digital dermatitis, which is weird growths out of the skin of a cow, and it's also caused by bacteria in the same family as the one that causes Lyme. The filaments are made of keratin, the same stuff as your hair and nails, but also have an amyloid component, making them similar to the plaques found in the brains of patients with Alzheimer's. And I want to be clear, I am not saying that all Alzheimer's patients have Lyme, but Borrelia can definitely cause amyloid deposits in the brain, so it kind of makes sense it could show up in other places too. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room around this, which is that a lot of patients who go to the doctor and say they feel crawling under the skin and see little weird things growing out of their skin, and because all things chronic Lyme are rarely understood by most doctors, and many of these patients are middle-aged women, the doctors think the patients are crazy and just prescribe psychiatric treatment. Even Mayo suggests this is the best route. And they say, get treatment for any condition that affects your thinking, mood, or behavior, which, like, come on guys, infections can do that, but SSRIs aren't going to cut it. So I think we can do better. Enter earthworms.
What?
Yeah, sorry, it's gross, I know. Also not vegan, but not exactly endangered either. Earthworms have this cool compound called lumbrokinase, which has been extensively studied for its effects on fibrin. Traditionally, earthworms are used as medicine for some of these symptoms of itching and crawling under the skin, when we can also see that blood clots are forming incorrectly. The blood clots in this case are the improperly laid down fibrin and keratin, and the Borrelia infection is behind it. So when we treat patients with Morgellons in the clinic, we will often put just a teensy bit of medicinal earthworms into the patient's formula to direct the actions of it to those parts of the body, along with the herbs we use to slay the spirochetes. Yum. The more you know.
See, now this one was the complete opposite of the one before. He says that it actually is like there is a disease where your body creates like extra fingernail type hair coming out of your pores, and you like feel it, creepy crawly. Ugh, that's crazy. And then they treat it with worms. All right, but yeah, I've never heard of it before, and it's very controversial, I guess. Some people that get this are treated like they're crazy, and some people actually are treated as though they have these weird things growing out of their skin, out of their body. But that either way, it sounds like it sucks.
Conspiracy Quickie number 4. Is Facebook actually a DARPA project named LifeLog? DARPA, or the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, was working on a project in 2003 to compile an electronic database of every activity and relationship a person engages in. This included credit card purchases, websites visited, the contents of your text, emails, and phone calls, as well as your favorite TV and radio stations, what books you've read, your physical location based on GPS, and your biometric data. The goal is to identify a person's preferences, goals, and other markers of intentionality. Sounds a lot like what social media sites are doing right now, but don't worry, this project was scrapped on February 3rd of 2004, just one day before the launch of Facebook.
Well, that is news to me. And if you've been here for any amount of time, that's not a huge surprise. A lot of the stuff we look at is news to me. Like, I didn't even know about DARPA. We being me, I just learned about DARPA in the last couple of months, and they've got all kinds of good stuff going on, don't they? But that is awfully convenient that it ended one day before the launch of Facebook.
How have so many other noble vessels, perfectly sound, perfectly manned, perfectly navigated, been wrecked in calm weather, not only in dark night or in a fog, but in broad daylight and sunshine, in the former case upon the coasts, in the latter upon sunken rocks, from being out of reckoning, under circumstances which until now have baffled every satisfactory explanation? The equatorial circumference of the supposed ball Earth is said to be 24,900 statute, or 21,600 nautical miles. A nautical mile is the distance following the supposed curvature of the Earth from 1 minute of latitude to the next. A statute mile is the straight line distance between the two, not taking into account Earth's alleged curvature. The Australian handbook Almanac Shippers and Importers Directory states that the distance between Sydney and Nelson is 1,400 nautical or 1,633 statute miles, allowing a more than sufficient 83 miles as the distance for rounding Cape Farewell and sailing up Tasman Bay to Nelson leaves 1,550 statute miles as the straight line distance from the meridian of Sydney to the meridian of Nelson. Their given difference in longitude is 22 degrees, 2 minutes, 14 seconds. Therefore, if 22 degrees, 2 minutes, 14 seconds out of 360 is 1,550 miles, the entirety measures 25,182 miles. This is larger than the Earth is said to be at the equator, and 4,262 miles greater than it would be at Sydney's southern latitude on a globe of said proportions. 1/360th part of 25,182 gives 70 miles as the distance between each degree of longitude at Sydney's 34-degree southern latitude. On a globe, 25,000 miles in equatorial circumference, however, degrees of longitude at 34 degrees latitude would be only 58 miles, a full 12 miles per degree less than reality. This perfectly explains why Ross and other navigators in the Deep South experienced 12-plus mile daily discrepancies between their reckoning and reality. The farther south traveled, the farther the divide.
All right, so in my family, I've been known as the one that is pretty darn good with math. Always have been, except for quadratic equations because they suck. Now, full disclosure, I don't have a single clue what just happened there. I even went and got a second cup of coffee. I watched a second and a third time, and it is like 7:30 in the morning. I got nothing. I don't do well with nautical stuff, and I'm sure that was a lot of beautiful explanation that just went over my head. So I hope you understood it. So that clip was more for you than it was for me because that made me feel stupid.
This is what a streaming farm looks like, aka the black market of the music industry. It's how some musicians and labels distort reality to push their tracks to the top of the charts and earn more money. Streaming farms use bots to artificially play music on platforms like Spotify or Apple Music to drastically inflate the numbers of streams a song gets. In March, a man in Denmark was sentenced to 18 months in prison for getting music streaming services to pay him $290,000 in royalties for fake streams. But that rare case is just a glimpse into the scale of this fraud. In a 2019 Rolling Stone article, Hopeless Records founder Louis Posen claimed this illegal practice potentially steals $300 million a year from artists with legitimate streams from real fans, equaling 3 to 4% of all streams. But that estimate is much higher now. A 2023 analyst report from the Financial Times found that up to 10% of all music streams globally are fake. This matters because there's a pool of money that streaming platforms distribute to the rights holders of songs. So when an artist is faking those streams, they're taking money out of that pool that could go to artists with legitimate streams. The creation of streaming farms follows the decline of radio and the rise of its replacement, streaming platforms. Major artists and labels historically paid radio DJs to play their music, but streaming platforms like Spotify are democratizing music, allowing independent artists a platform. But that means larger artists and labels are struggling to stay on top of the charts, so they compete by buying streams. Streaming services like Spotify have recently tried to crack down on this by looking specifically for erratic behavior, like a sudden jump in streams or a song on repeat for hours. A Spotify spokesperson said that when they detect artificial streams, they withhold royalties and tell the label or distributor. They can also choose to remove tracks from the platform and fine labels and distributors. But some musicians say they're being targeted by bots and then unfairly punished as a result. Marketing agencies hired by the artists might be responsible though, going behind the backs of the artists to fulfill their promises. Apple Music has similarly been penalizing streaming fraud too since 2022. But somehow people are continuing to steal from the royalty pool, which is already too small and meant for artists with real fans. And with advancements in AI, who knows what the scale of this issue could actually be now and in the future.
That was just a little more on what we talked about yesterday as far as fake views and stuff like that. Like, it's not even people that are out there doing stuff. Obviously, the musicians can do it too. And it makes me think of how there's that Instagram set where you can go and pay for like an hour of shooting and you can sit inside of like the private jet cockpit, like it's built in a warehouse, and you can go and take your stupid little Instagram pictures in there. You can pay, well, I don't know if you can still, but there was like situations where you would be able to go to a warehouse that is set up with tons of phones and just play your own stuff. And I guess people were making a lot of money off of it, and they're cracking down, which is good because people need to be paid for what they deserve.
What we're here to talk about today is the fact that the brain is and will be the 21st century battlescape in many ways. End of story. You will encounter some form of neurocognitive science that has been weaponized not only in your military career, but in your personal and professional lives. It is valid, valuable, and already in operational play. The brain is the current and future battle space. What's new about this is the in-close nature of this. Increasingly, we're not seeing these things as weapons of mass destruction against gross aspects of the population. More specifically, perhaps, might be targeting individuals on a level that allows either direct attribution or covert engagement with non-attribution. If we talk about what brain science is, let me just give you a little bit of brief background on this field that is now called neuroscience. As a titular field, as a named field, neuroscience has only been in existence for 40 years. I know that because I've been a neuroscientist for about 38 of those 40 years. Increasingly, it is becoming an international, multinational, global, and independently exercised event and endeavor, which increases the capability of the brain sciences to develop not only new theories, but ever more sophisticated tools. So, how then can we use these elements as weapons, means of contending against others? Formal definition of a weapon, probably the one that you've heard about most recently, most contemporaneously in the literature, is the possibility to use some form of directed energy to affect physiology peripherally and also to affect the physiology and health of the brain. Case in point here, U.S. Embassy personnel in Havana and possibly in China. Clearly, one of the things we can also do is transcranial neuromodulation, the idea of going through the skull to modulate the node and network activity of the brain, to implant certain brain-machine interfaces. These are many of the DARPA programs that you may hear of now. Probably the one that is most notorious is something called the N3 program, which is the non-invasive neurosurgical neuromodulation program being run by their program manager, Dr. Al Mundi. The idea here is to put minimal-sized electrodes in a network within a brain through only minimal intervention to be able to read and write into the brain function in real time, remotely.
See? I told you DARPA's got some crazy stuff going on. And that's just the first half of the video. We'll get into the second half another time, and we'll find out exactly what they're trying to do in manipulating the brains. I like to keep my episodes between 15 and 20 minutes, and I don't want to show too many like really long clips. I know they get a little monotonous, and I'm trying to get people to stay until this point, where I say thank you so much for sharing your time with me. And then I ask you to come on back tomorrow, because we're going to watch some new stuff. I'll say different things. It's going to be fantastic. Until then, have a wonderful day.